"You don't belong here." Her response? Silence. Until her father arrives with a revelation no one saw coming. It was an early Saturday afternoon in San Diego, and the boutique hummed with quiet activity. Shoppers browsed through racks of designer dresses and high-end handbags, their conversations blending softly with the ambient jazz playing overhead. The store was sleek and modern, its polished floors reflecting the sunlight streaming in from the tall windows. Everything about it screamed exclusivity. Amidst the shoppers, a young black girl, no more than 12, wandered the aisles alone. Her name was Amara. She wore a simple hoodie, jeans and sneakers, a stark contrast to the store's usual clientele, who were often decked out in designer labels. She wasn't touching anything, just walking slowly, her eyes scanning the displays with quiet curiosity. The sales staff watched her from the counter, their expressions unreadable. No one approached her, but their subtle glances suggested they were wondering why she was there. She seemed out of place, yet entirely unbothered by it. As Amara walked toward a shelf of scarves, a tall woman in her late 40s entered the boutique. Her appearance was striking. Platinum blonde hair, perfectly styled, a pearl necklace resting on her tailored blazer, and heels that clicked with authority on the floor. She didn't look like she was there to shop. She looked like she owned the place. The woman's sharp gaze landed on Amara almost instantly. Her lips pursed, and her demeanor shifted. Something about the girl's presence unsettled her, though she said nothing at first. Instead, she lingered near the entrance, pretending to browse while keeping an eye on Amara. Amara seemed unaware of the attention, or perhaps she was choosing to ignore it. She reached out to gently feel the fabric of a silk scarf, her small fingers brushing against its edge. But the woman's gaze remained fixed, her annoyance growing with each passing second. And though the boutique had been peaceful just moments ago, you could feel the tension beginning to rise, but it wasn't clear to everyone just yet. The air in the boutique began to shift as the woman's annoyance turned into action. She set down the handbag she had been pretending to inspect and strode purposefully toward Amara, her heels clicking with precision. Heads turned subtly, shoppers and staff alike sensing something was about to unfold. When the woman reached Amara, she stood just close enough to assert her presence without outright touching her. "Excuse me," she said, her tone sharp but controlled, like a teacher scolding a child. "Can I help you with something?" Amara turned to her, startled but polite. "No, thank you. I'm just looking." The woman raised an eyebrow, her expression a mix of disbelief and disdain. "Looking, huh?" she said, letting the words hang in the air. "This isn't the kind of store you just look in." Amara blinked, confused by the comment but still calm. "I'm just waiting for someone," she explained, her voice steady. "I'm not bothering anyone." The woman crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing as she looked Amara up and down. "Waiting for someone? In here? You expect me to believe that?" A couple of shoppers nearby exchanged glances but remained silent, unwilling to get involved. The sales associates behind the counter whispered among themselves, their faces betraying a mix of discomfort and uncertainty about how to handle the situation. "I don't think you belong here," the woman said bluntly, her voice loud enough for others to hear. "This is a boutique, not a playground. If you're not going to buy anything, you need to leave." Amara's face tightened slightly, but she held her composure. "I have every right to be here," she replied, meeting the woman's gaze directly. "I'm not doing anything wrong." The woman scoffed, her tone dripping with condescension. "Right. And who exactly are you waiting for? Your parents? Shouldn't they be here to supervise you?" By now the room was quiet. Everyone was watching, though most pretended not to. The tension was palpable, thick enough to make anyone uncomfortable. But Amara didn't back down. She stood her ground, her small frame radiating a quiet strength. "I'm waiting for my dad," she said firmly. The woman smirked, as if the idea was laughable. "Your dad? And where exactly is he? Amara didn't answer right away, her calm exterior masking the flicker of irritation beneath. But before she could speak again, a voice broke the silence from behind them. It was deep, commanding, and impossible to ignore, and it sent a ripple through the room. "Right here," the voice said, steady and authoritative. Everyone turned toward the entrance, where a tall man in an impeccably tailored navy blue suit stood. His presence was undeniable. Broad shoulders, a sharp jawline, and the quiet confidence of someone used to being in control. He carried himself with a calm that could either diffuse a situation or command it, depending on what was needed. The woman's expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. "And you are?" she asked, her tone laced with skepticism, as if challenging his right to intervene. The man stepped forward, his polished leather shoes making muted thuds against the boutique's floor. He didn't rush, he didn't need to. He stopped just beside Amara, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "I'm her father," he said plainly, his gaze locking onto the woman's with quiet intensity. The boutique was utterly silent now. Even the faint whispers of the sales staff had ceased. The woman blinked, clearly taken aback but unwilling to backpedal entirely. "Well," she stammered, "I just assumed... she seemed out of place here." "Out of place?" The man's voice was even, but there was an edge to it now. "And what exactly about her seemed out of place to you?" The woman shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware that the conversation was no longer in her control. "It's just... this is a high-end boutique," she muttered, her confidence wavering. "We don't usually see..." She stopped herself mid-sentence, realizing how bad it would sound if she finished the thought. The man tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "You don't usually see what?" he prompted. His tone wasn't raised, but the weight of the question hung heavy in the air. "I didn't mean any harm," the woman said quickly, her voice cracking under the pressure. "I just thought she might be lost or..." "Lost?" he interrupted, his voice sharp but controlled. "She's not lost. She's here, in this store, like anyone else, and I'd like to know why you felt the need to single her out." By now the other shoppers were openly watching, their gazes bouncing between the man and the woman. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked relieved that someone was finally addressing the situation. I was just trying to protect the store," the woman offered weakly. But even she didn't seem convinced by her own words. The man raised an eyebrow. "Protect the store? From a 12-year-old girl looking at scarves? Or is there something else you're protecting it from?" The woman's face flushed red, her confidence fully crumbling under the weight of the moment. But as the man's words hung in the air, the real shock was still to come, and it would leave no room for misunderstanding. The man took a small step forward, his presence commanding the attention of everyone in the boutique. "Let me make something clear," he said, his voice steady but firm. "You're speaking to the CEO of the very company that owns this boutique." The air seemed to freeze for a moment. The woman's eyes widened in disbelief, her mouth slightly agape as if she couldn't comprehend what she'd just heard. Around the room, gasps and murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Even the sales associates exchanged stunned glances, unsure of what to do or say. The woman stammered, her bravado completely gone now. "I didn't know." The man let out a short, humorless laugh. "Didn't know," he repeated, his tone sharp. "No, you didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't take a moment to think. You saw my daughter, made your assumptions, and decided you had the right to treat her as if she didn't belong. You didn't even stop to consider that she might have every right to be here." Amara stood silently beside her father, her expression calm, but her eyes betraying a flicker of pride. She had endured the woman's hostility without losing her composure, and now her father was standing up for her in a way that left no room for argument. The woman opened her mouth as if to respond, but no words came out. She looked around as though searching for someone to back her up, but no one met her gaze. Instead, The other shoppers watched her with thinly veiled judgment, their earlier discomfort now replaced with something closer to disdain. "I built this company from the ground up," the man continued, his voice steady and measured. "Not for people like you to decide who belongs and who doesn't. Not for anyone to feel unwelcome in a space that was meant to be inclusive." One of the sales associates, a young man with a name tag that read Elliot, finally stepped forward. "Sir, we didn't know," he began, but the man raised a hand to silence him. "This isn't about you," the man said firmly, his gaze never leaving the woman. "But let this be a lesson for everyone in this room. Assumptions like these, judging someone by their appearance, their age, their clothing, it's not just wrong, it's dangerous. It's the kind of thinking that perpetuates the very worst parts of our society." The woman looked as though she wanted to sink into the floor. Her confidence, so unwavering just minutes ago, had completely disintegrated. But as much as she wanted to escape, there was no turning back now. The weight of her actions had already caught up with her. The room remained silent as the man's words echoed, their weight undeniable. The woman, visibly shaken, took a small step back, her hands fidgeting nervously. Her earlier air of authority was gone, replaced by the unmistakable look of someone grappling with shame. Amara, still standing quietly beside her father, glanced around the room. She caught the eyes of a few onlookers, some offering apologetic smiles, others quickly looking away. She didn't need to say anything. Her father's presence and words had done more than enough. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," the woman muttered, barely audible. Her eyes darted between Amara and her father, desperation creeping into her voice. "I wasn't trying to be racist," the man interjected, finishing the sentence she couldn't bring herself to say. His tone wasn't accusatory, but it carried a bluntness that left no room for excuses. "Maybe you weren't trying to be. But your actions say otherwise. You didn't see a little girl browsing scarves. You saw a little black girl and assumed she didn't belong. That's the truth, isn't it?" The woman's face burned red, but she didn't deny it. She couldn't. A voice broke the silence from one of the other shoppers, a middle-aged woman who had been watching quietly. "He's right," she said, stepping forward slightly. "We all saw what happened. You judged her without knowing a thing about her." Others began nodding in agreement, their murmurs growing louder. The weight of collective judgment pressed down on the woman, and for a moment she looked as though she might cry. But the man wasn't finished. "It's not enough to feel bad about it now," he said, his voice softening just slightly. "What matters is what you do next. Are you going to keep letting your biases control how you treat people? Or are you going to learn from this and do better?" The woman swallowed hard, her eyes glistening. She opened her mouth as if to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she simply nodded, her head bowed slightly. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Turning to Amara, the man gave her a small smile. "Are you ready to go, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Amara nodded. "Yes, Dad." As they walked toward the exit, the crowd parted to let them through. The air in the boutique felt heavier now, not with tension but with reflection. Shoppers whispered to one another, their conversations laced with words like bias and respect. The staff at the counter exchanged looks, as if silently promising each other to handle things differently moving forward. As Amara and her father stepped out into the sunlight, she glanced up at him. "Thanks, Dad," she said quietly. He looked down at her, his face softening. "You shouldn't have to thank me for standing up for you," he said, "but I'll always be here when you need me." But as they walked away, one thing was certain. The lesson they left behind would linger long after the boutique doors closed. Inside the boutique, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The woman who had caused the commotion stood quietly, her head lowered as if the weight of the situation had finally settled on her shoulders. She didn't leave right away, instead lingering as though trying to process what had just happened. The other shoppers resumed their browsing, but their conversations were quieter, more reflective. Some stole glances at the woman, while others exchanged knowing looks with each other. The sales associates whispered amongst themselves, their expressions marked by a mix of discomfort and resolve. Outside, Amara and her father walked toward their car. The sun was bright, and the bustling street seemed worlds away from the tension they had just left behind. "Do things like that happen to you a lot?" Amara asked suddenly, her voice quiet but curious. Her father paused, considering his response carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Not always as directly as what happened in there. But it happens. People make assumptions. They think they know who you are just by looking at you." Amara frowned. "Does it ever stop?" Her father crouched slightly, meeting her gaze. "It might not stop entirely, but what matters is how we respond. We can't control how other people act, but we can control how we handle it. And sometimes, standing tall and speaking the truth is the most powerful thing you can do." Amara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I'm glad you were there," she said softly. "It made me feel safe." Her father smiled. "You're never alone, Amara. Always remember that." As they got into the car, the boutique doors swung open behind them. The woman stepped out, her face still red with embarrassment. She hesitated on the sidewalk, watching as Amara and her father drove away. Something in her expression suggested she might finally be questioning the beliefs that had led her to act the way she did. Inside the car, Amara gazed out the window. She wasn't angry, just thoughtful. "Do you think she'll change?" she asked. Her father glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I hope so," he said. "Sometimes people need a moment like that to really see themselves. But whether she changes or not, the important thing is that we keep living our lives with dignity and respect. That's what makes the real difference." Amara smiled faintly, nodding as she watched the city pass by outside. The lesson her father had taught her today wasn't just about standing up against prejudice. It was about the strength that comes from knowing your worth, no matter what others might assume. And as their car disappeared into the busy street, the message they left behind in that boutique would ripple outward, challenging assumptions and planting the seeds of change in the minds of everyone who had witnessed it. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading messages of understanding and respect. Together, we can inspire change, one story at a time.